Okay, thank you for joining us today. My name is Chris Descato, and I thank you for joining us on Friday at 12 o'clock. And this will, I guarantee you, be part of your week, not just because it's Friday. Mark, can you forward? So I'm proud to be joined by Mark Miller today, who is the Global Collaboration Sales and Strategy for Cisco. My name is Chris Descato. I'm Director of Sales for Salamander. And today, if you can advance one more, Mark. So today, what we're going to be talking about is collaborative, flexible workspaces and how we're seeing the workspaces develop. One thing that we're going to be talking heavily about is video integration, and we're seeing more companies integrate video because going forward, there's almost always going to be a virtual participant, and how these rooms come together is very important. And we're going to be talking about how they can come together very flexible way, a very easy way, using Salamander and Cisco, which we have a great partnership, and it's pretty unique. Not only are we partnering on a lot of technology and how the rooms come together, but also we're a supplier for Cisco as well. So I'll let Mark take it away.
Thanks so much, Chris. I appreciate your time today. Once again, as a quick intro, my name is Mark Miller. I work at Cisco in our collaboration technology group, and I lead a small team within Cisco focused around the future of work. In that role, I get an opportunity to talk to clients a lot around their future of work plans and how they're seeing the future of the workplace. I also get an opportunity to work with Cisco's real estate and HR teams and our IT teams as we're thinking about the redesign of our workplace. And a lot of the story we're going to talk to you about today is our evolution and our evolution around the workplace as it sits at Cisco. We're roughly about 22 million square feet of office real estate, most of it carpeted, a great majority of it carpeted, spread over 94 countries, 492 buildings or so, and an asset that obviously we are constantly looking to do different things with. Our evolution of our workplace really started with the rollout of collaboration technology. Although many things have truly impacted the workplace setting, and you folks all know this, right? Changing nature of work, the rise of the millennials and their entry into the workplace, the demand for flexibility. I would tell you technology, I think, has been both a catalyst and a savior around the workplace. And what I think is really interesting, and the observation that we've made here at Cisco, is the more collaboration technology we gave our folks, the more their expectations around the workplace have changed. And in fact, we did a study back about 7 years ago, 2013, and we realized that we were sitting on a lot of real estate that was really being sub-optimized. We were sitting at the time about 27 million square feet of office real estate. And when we looked at how our spaces were being used, using badged in data, our occupancy was sub 50%. And the reality is, and we started to look at how people were really using the spaces because people don't badge out when they leave, our utilization was closer to 26 to 28%. And that really started this whole effort we had at Cisco to look to do a lot of consolidation of our real estate, like many of you have done, but also taking a sliver of that savings and redesigning the workplaces we had. And what I find interesting is, as much as we went through this exercise, I'll show you some pictures of some of the offices we built over the course of the years. This is Sydney, Australia. We're looking Sydney Harbor, beautiful site. Toronto, a new office we opened up in Singapore. And this is one of my favorite ones. This is in Barcelona, Spain. This is an abandoned 200-year-old textile mill that we did a little work on. Actually, the building didn't even have a roof, but it's now our innovation center for Central Europe, and one of the most spectacular buildings I think we've developed. And through this journey, we realized that we needed to keep tight alignment around space design, technology, and culture. And those three things really always came together as we redesigned our offices. Here's the interesting fact. We got through a massive consolidation at Cisco around our footprint. And last year, pre-pandemic, we started to look at actually how our workplaces were being used again. And even as much as of what we did around consolidation and transformation, and I mean consolidation of almost a third of our portfolio, when we looked at how our people were using our space again, our utilization was back down to about 50%. The reality is technology is making space, the expectations around space change quicker than we can actually change the space itself. And I think that's a really interesting nugget that hopefully you all take out of this. Then we had this little thing called the pandemic hit, and this has certainly changed our view of the workplace and really challenged many of the long-held assumptions around how we look to manage and build out and operate our real estate footprint. We truly think, right, if you think about the days of yesterday, where the idea that the workplace was really the center of the universe, we had a very, at a global level, many companies at an aggregate level, I should say, had a remote population of probably between 15 and 20%. Cisco was much higher. We were a company that embraced flexible working quite early, but at an aggregate level, across the globe, I think the stats that I have seen had remote working at sub 20%. To the pandemic, where 90% of people working at home, and in fact, a 12,000% increase, believe it or not, of remote working when the pandemic hit, to a world where we think going forward, where we think the expectations of the workplace are going to be very different. What we tend to believe, not only at Cisco, but as we talk to our clients around this, is you're going to have three populations. You're going to have a population that's going to be fully remote. You're going to have a population that's going to be fully in the office, and you're going to have a very large group of people that are going to be filling this role as hybrid workers, ones that will swing back and forth to the office when needed. They will blend both the physical and virtual worlds of work. And I think this calls out in many of the things that we see in much of the research that has been done recently. This is an article from Fortune magazine, some research they did released over the summer, where they went back and asked the executives of the Fortune 500 companies what impact the pandemic had on their business. And I think there are two questions in here that are pretty startling and telling to the future that we are all going to be living in. The first question was, when do you think at least 90% of your workforce will return to their usual workplace? 26% of those executives said never. And when do you think travel will return to pre-pandemic levels? And 51% said never. And I think what that leads to this is this belief that we are going to have a highly dispersed workforce, not only in the short term, but for the long term. And I think as we think about designing spaces at Cisco, we know that we are going to need to provide different types of spaces, right? And we are going to have to rethink our philosophy around space. And technology is going to be an incredibly important part of that. And when we think about that, we think about three elements. We think that the workplace is going to need to be more informative. We think the workplace is going to need to be more intelligent. And lastly, the workplace is going to need to be more collaborative. And I think it's this last one that we've really embraced our work with Salamander. It's really key to a lot of things we're doing inside Cisco. And although the other two are important, I think the one that we kind of want to focus on right now is the last one. And a perfect example of that is an office that we recently opened in Chicago, Illinois. And I can jokingly say we opened because we finished the project and then we shrink wrap the building, and we're waiting for a time that we can actually go back, which will probably be post-summer at this point. This, if anybody has been to Chicago, this is a rendering of what they expect Post Office Square to look like. This is the Central Post Office in downtown Chicago. In olden days, it was built back in the 1930s during the WPA, and really any bit of mail that came from the East Coast to the West Coast actually went through this office. It is now a newly designed epicenter of technology and retail and mixed use. A lot of development going on. We've carved up about and leased about 85,000 square feet in this building. We're going to hopefully, when this whole situation we're going through is over, we're going to have about 450 employees that this building will service. But the reality is we started to realize even as the pandemic was hitting that we needed to design different spaces. And here is an example of just a small sliver of that footprint. I would say this is about a third of the floor plate. And what you can see is we went heavy on collaboration spaces and in partnership with Salamander in many of these spaces. I will tell you that in this office, which is kind of a mixed use of both sales and administration as well as engineering, a great percentage of the floor plate, north of 50%, is dedicated to collaboration and collaborative activities. And as you can see, many of those highlighted here. On the left, large meeting spaces for big meetings, not as much as we used to because we don't see a lot of those meetings happening. Along the right side, pictures and images of some spaces that we work with Salamander on that are really more for those small to medium-sized meetings, and then a lot of individual and small team space across the top. A lot of one-person spaces, two-person spaces in these huddle rooms, 3 to 4 people. And that's a really important part of our strategy, is precision in making sure that we have the right amount of space and the right types of space. But as we started this exercise around Chicago and other projects that we've kicked off since then, we've started to think about collaboration and this idea that collaboration is not a single activity. When people go to collaborate, there's really 4 things they potentially could be doing. They could be going to share information. They could go in there to be making a decision. They could be in a space around a team building activity or brainstorming. And believe it or not, each of these has a unique outcome and needs to have a unique set of design elements to make those outcomes a reality. The second thing we started to realize also is we needed to think about collaboration not only as in spaces, in walled offices, but we needed to also create places for people to collaborate. And the important learning we had here is the more places we created for people to collaborate, spaces in the open plan, places that were casual in nature, yet some of them video enabled, right? What that did for us is that took the pressure off of our spaces, right? We used to have, as many of you, we had issues with people saying, there's not enough spaces, there's not enough meeting rooms. If we started to provide these informal spaces, some of them, as I said, technically enabled, what we were also able to do was lessen the burden on those walled spaces. And actually, in many cases, lessen the quantity of those, which provided us a lot more flexibility and efficiency. And as I said before, a keen focus on small spaces. And this is an area that I know Salamander is really focused on as well. An interesting fact at Cisco, our average meeting at Cisco is 3.7 people in a room and 2 people remote. That's pre-pandemic. And as you see, you can see the average meeting occupancy. This is some stats from some surveying we did and some analysis we did for an office we were building in Asia Pacific. In that office, 75% of the meetings were less than 4 people, right? The problem was the office we were in at the time, the distribution of those types of offices was in imbalance, right? A majority of our spaces were built to handle medium-sized meetings, right? So being able to go back, understanding this and truing this up is really, really important for us, making sure we're delivering precision, that precision of understanding how people are meeting and building the right types of spaces and making sure all of the spaces are video enabled going forward so there isn't a less of experience is critical in driving efficiency. When we also start thinking about these spaces, we started to work quite a lot with our architecture and design firms. And we have a design team at Cisco that is built, it's actually made up of people with backgrounds in architecture and design. But we also work with the likes of Gensler and some other big firms around the designs of our spaces. We've started to bring in this idea that we really need to manage different elements when building out both these formal and informal collaboration spaces. We need to worry about the orientation, right? We needed to understand how the spaces were oriented and how people were positioned. We need to really make sure we were focused on posture, right? And an upright posture for rooms that we were trying to drive and stimulate interaction, and a seated posture in many cases for places where we were doing information sharing and decision making. We had to really worry about the ambiance of the room, right? And natural lighting and all those effects that came into this, the density of the space, and obviously the surface. And surface shape is really, really important and something that we've started to partner quite a lot with Salamander on. But most importantly, when we build these collaboration spaces, which I said are now dominating our workplace environments, we need to make sure we're getting 3 results out of any design. We need to make sure these spaces are optimized for the outcomes that we're looking to get. We need to make sure they're flexible, and we need to make sure they're adaptable as we know technology is going to change. And when I say optimized, we'll go first there, that is not only for the people in the room, but also for the people that are remote. And I think we sometimes lose track of that. And especially when we started to talk with our architecture and design teams and our partners in that space, there was little attention given to the remote experience, right? Everybody was kind of focused around the in-person experience. And we've done some analysis and we've done some exercises with Salamander on this specifically, right? Around Salamander working with our engineering teams to understand optimal table shape and how to build furniture that truly matches up with the technology that you're trying to get in the space. And this is really, really critical for delivering this experience that you're trying to drive towards, right? And it isn't just large rooms. The fact is, what's going on right now, Salamander is working with our team to really look at this at an entire portfolio of tables that we will have that will match up with the technology that our engineering teams are building that many of you may be consuming yourselves. So Chris, I'll give you here an opportunity to maybe talk about some of the things we're doing in this space.
Oh, great. Well, thank you, Mark. And we're excited to be you're partnering with Cisco on the panorama table. And as Mark was talking about, it's not just about the shape, it's not just about the materials, it's not just about the color, it's about everything coming together in order to have a great experience, both with the participants in the room and also from afar as well. So this is actually the first time that we're publicly showing this table. So this particular table, it actually is right now in our engineering lab in Bloomfield, Connecticut. So it's a real picture. We're going to be actually shipping this table come say end of April, early May is when this will go live. We've been working with Cisco on this now for almost a year to develop this particular table. And again, it's about the cut-ins as well. Can the table accept the cut-ins, the microphones, hide the wires, so that way it's very easy to install, and the finished product lets the technology get out of the way, and you have a beautiful room to really have great meetings. And not only working with Cisco, but also our enterprise clients and other technology partners, we're constantly learning about how to best adapt rooms to these new environments, and working with lots of different stakeholders in order to develop furniture that really does work well with the technology. We make furniture that loves technology. So along with the panorama table, which will be our premier table series, we also have our unified tables. And these have been shipping since about, I would say about June, but we've been making these for over a year and a half for select enterprise clients. And we developed these tables along with our technology partners and learning from the first deployments that we did for some of our best, kind of Fortune 50 customers. And if you go to the next slide, so what you'll see here is that we standardized on 3 shapes. So we have the rectangular shape, which is really the most popular shape. If you look around any environment, you see a lot of rectangles. Human beings love rectangles. But the best shape for a video collaboration is that trapezoidal shape. So that middle your table there, that's a trapezoid. Any room that is going to be heavily involved with video conferencing should use a trapezoid table. It gets everyone on camera, and it's a great way to collaborate with people both in the room and also external. And of course, as Mark has been pointing out, even when this pandemic is over and everyone is going back to basically pre-pandemic sort of lifestyles, one thing that has changed forever is not as people are going to go back into the office, as Mark was talking about, right? There's always going to be video participants in almost every meeting, right? So even those companies that maybe never had video participants before, now they're more likely to have at least one or two during every single meeting. So having the furniture that works well with that is very important. And then finally, we have the boat-shaped table. This is great for heavily in-person meetings because it gets everyone around the table and they're all looking at each other. Now, what you'll see here is we have sizes, and this says up to 16 feet, but in reality, these go to as long as you need. We just deployed, for example, a few 30-foot tables. So if you need something small for a small kind of almost like like a huddle space or just a little bit above a huddle space, all the way up to your executive boardrooms, we have a size in the unified line that'll meet your needs. And then also the materials that we use can be specified by your designer or architect. And then we also have a palette of materials that we also use as standard as well. So if you go to the next slide. So the AV magic for this particular product happens in the pedestal base. One of the hard things about getting a table into a room, especially if it's pre-existing, is matching up where the table needs to go with any electrical outlets or core that's in the floor. So our pedestal base runs along the center of the table, most of the way. There's always enough leg room around the table and at the ends for people to sit, but that your pedestal base is in the entire center of the table. So as long as your electric is coming up somewhere in the center, which normally it is, you're going to be able to cover that and hide those wires. And then what you'll see here is that the pedestal base also allows you to have retractors, cables inside, hide those things. And the sides of the table come completely off. So it's very easy to wire manage and service as well. And what's nice is you'll notice that there's something called an aluminum J channel, and that actually allows it to be rested on the ground without chipping the actual material. So what we try and design and why we have been so successful over the last 7 years of incredible growth in this channel is that we're looking at the high design that companies want in their meeting spaces, all the materials that those companies want, but also making sure that it's very easy to install, goes in quickly, and is easily serviced as well. So it's something that we think of the entire life cycle of the product and how we can add value during each stage. Next slide, Mark.
Yeah, and I'm going to make just a quick comment, Chris, on some of the things you said. One could sit back and say, geez, do I really need to put that much effort and thought into a table? Isn't a table a table? I will tell you that what we're trying to do in our relationship with Salamander is trying to take some of the confusion and magic out of this thing, right? If we can work together as partners and create optimal configurations that you can just put together, it's going to alleviate the rework that's going to need to be done on site. And it gives you peace of mind that you're going to get a predictable outcome. And honestly, I've been doing this now for a few years and been involved in enough projects where we're changing things at the last minute, or we're realizing the part of the project that I hate most is I know that's what I asked for, but not what I wanted, right? So we're trying to get past that and actually provide what we think are these optimal experience by putting the thought leaders together to come. And as I said, it's just not about shape. It's about structure. It's about mic placement. It's about the surface. It's about the elevations, making sure each of you have all the information you needed just to make these things go in as easily as possible. What we're also seeing here is this idea of flexibility, right? We're starting to see a lot of internal use cases in Cisco where people are wanting these intelligent boards. In our world, it's a Webex board. Obviously, other manufacturers have other variety. And look, we've deployed these internal to Cisco, probably like many of you. We throw them up on the wall and we hope things work and start to realize that, sometimes you don't get the experience you want. As much as these boards are really good for people to stand up and interact at it, if I'm going to now use it in a seated environment, what you tend to get, and unfortunately, I apologize for the shiny dome here that you're having to look at, you tend to look down, right? The camera angles are at a steep incline to the people who are seated at maybe a 30-inch high table, and you get a very distorted experience of the people that are being viewed remotely. In this, we've gotten feedback from people. How can we fix this? And we've looked at this from a software perspective. Can we change the position of the cameras? Hey, there's a simple solution for this that we're looking at right now. And Salamander offers these wall stands and lifts that if I could actually just equip and mount the boards on these things, I can literally change the position of the unit when I'm using it in a video-centric experience. And just by sliding that device down in a huddle room, I get a very different experience that is much more effective for both the in-room and remote participant. It's also very good, obviously, for ADA, and that's primarily how Salamander had positioned this before. We are looking at it as, obviously, it solves that problem for us, but it also solves a problem of being able to sort of have that flexibility that we're trying to drive in these spaces. So Chris, you comment on those?
Yeah, so we have lifts both on wall, and then you can also see our mobile cart there that supports a wide range of displays, all of the Webex boards. So from your 55, your 70, and your 85-inch on something that is wall mounted and can go up and down, or on a cart that has a wide range of travel. So this particular cart here goes from about 34, 36 inches center of screen all the way up to about 63 inches center of screen. So wide range of travel there. So no matter how tall you are, or if you're in a wheelchair, it's very easy to interact with this. And of course, at the high levels, it's great for a presentation. And then of course, you can bring it down for that video conferencing. Also, bringing it all the way down makes it much easier to move around a building, especially when you get to the 85-inch Webex board. It's much easier to lower it down. You can see over it. So that sort of ergonomics comes into play with these carts. Now, also we support, for example, lots of deployments with other boards with the Cisco quad cams, the room kits, things of that nature. So it can really be a unified communications platform. Over here, what you can see is a dual screen cart that we support the dual screens up to about 70 inches. This is in its all the way lowered position. So this is also happens to be on a cart that is electric lift. We do have fixed site carts as well that also support all these. And then of course we have shelves, and in this case for the Touch 10.
Yeah, and I'll make a comment on this also. As people are thinking about the return to office, and we're even thinking about this as a bit, right? The reality is, we're starting to think that you need to consider video in the open plan. If for nothing else, this idea that it allows you the opportunity for much greater social distancing. And in the offices that we're redesigning now, there seems to be this desire to have video, to be able to bring video to the people as opposed to bring people to the video, right? I mean, if that makes any sense. And I've seemed to get a lot of inquiries from clients around this as well, as they think about their return to office, and just as we said before, the belief that we are going to need more video because we're going to have a lot more remote participants. I just need an effective way of delivering that. So I think it's an important point that Chris brings up here. So.
Okay, and here what you can see is more flexible work environments. Now, I just talked about our carts and our wall stand. We also, we're a furniture company that's been making beautiful furniture for over 29 years. And not only can we make beautiful furniture that stays in the room, but also furniture on wheels. And what we've been having more of a call for lately is furniture that actually can move around. And that's when you want a cart, but you want something that matches your current aesthetic with furniture, right? So we can do that expertly. Over here, you can see a 3-bay cabinet that has a display and a quad camera above. We can also have this in dual screen. And actually, we worked on a really interesting project with an architect for an enterprise client in Canada, where they had a large divisible space. And they wanted to be able to have 3 conference rooms, but then they wanted to open up the space and have a big event. So we actually did a 7-bay cabinet that was sectioned out and on wheels, so they could actually open up that large space. They can move it out of the environment. They could have their event and then wheel it back in. So that sort of flexibility is possible with our structure. And I'm going to be going over our cabinets in just a few slides. But we do a lot of customizations for particular use cases. So not only do we have a large variety of standard products that work in I would say 99% of your UC environments, but then we bring our custom division to bear to develop products that solve unique problems for our end users. The next slide. So as I mentioned, we have capability of working with the Webex boards 55, 70, and 85 on all of our carts. So again, we have the electric lift, which is being shown here, but we also have the fixed height as well. And as you see our furniture in a few slides, we are also compatible with all the Webex boards on our furniture as well.
Yeah, one of the great applications we saw of these mobile carts is on our multi-purpose rooms, the divided rooms, and be able to just bring in secondary displays because some of these rooms are deep, large and deep in nature, right? And being able to have the ability in a moment to have secondary displays brought in for content sharing and things like that. I think also the sort of the bread and butter of the Salamander business is around these credenzas, and it's something that many of you have probably had the opportunity to work with us over the years. It's just something we're looking at right now as we start to realize that not only is technology changing, but we're not exactly sure what the world's going to look like long term. And the Salamander product for us is started to come to the realization that gives us some flexibility. That if the world changes, that we need to start to divide space, and we need to start to introduce new technology, we're going to have some additional flexibility here. On top of it, just basic blocking and tackling stuff, the ability to integrate trash, recycle, storage into a credenza and not buying a secondary credenza seemed like a no-brainer for us, right? And when we were buying credenzas for spaces anyway, why wouldn't we buy one that was multifunctional, allowed us to integrate technology to it?
Yeah, so on our furniture, and these are our cabinets, and again, we've been making furniture like this for over 29 years, and what we've seen is that enterprise customers and customers in all categories, including higher ed and other places, what they love about our furniture is, again, we can match any decor. We have a wide palette of our standard finishes that ship really quickly. But one of the big benefits is the ability to mount all of the displays to the actual cabinet itself. And that means that there's no need for wall reinforcement. You're running conduit in the wall, moving electrical or data. When you think about the elevation drawing that happens when a room is being done, right? It always calls out where the blocking needs to be and where all those things need to be, and that costs end users, thousands of dollars. We've heard that on average it's about $3,000 to $6,000, for that wall to be modified for these displays to go up. Our cabinets can hold up to 400-pound monitors, dual 400-pound monitors. Not that many monitors are that heavy, but that's UL listed to that weight, right? So we have cabinets that are both, now this is a freestanding cabinet that you're seeing here. This is 21.25 inches deep, and you can put it in front of a window, right? You saw some imagery before that Mark had on slides where, a panel was in the middle of a room or against the window. And that's something that causes problems. If you have these nice glass meeting rooms, where do you put the actual display? And on one of our cabinets, can be a great a way to go. And it saves both time and money. There's less people involved in the installation. These cabinets come pretty much almost completely built, so there's very little on-site building of the cabinet. You normally, it's simply just placing in the shelves. Of course, there's racking and cooling and all those things because they've been designed for AV. And we work with your design team on the finishes, whether it be one of our standard finishes or something, or a laminate, or where maybe we're custom matching in-room millwork. We'll make sure that the cabinet matches your aesthetic expertly, and also making sure that the elevation that is called out in the AV spec is also matched. So, for example, with the Cisco quad cams, we see a lot of 44 to the 46-inch range. And we help specify that across multiple different size of monitors. So if, for example, a whole building's being done, or global, or say a global rollout, and you have many different types of rooms that may be getting 65-inch displays, some get 75, some get 98, some get dual 75s, all that is going to affect how these displays get mounted, and also as the size of the displays change, how high those displays need to be. So we'll take care of all that AV while also working with facilities or the design team in order to make sure that the external look is exactly what's needed as well. And then manage that deployment again, whether it be in the US or globally, to make sure that it shows up when it's needed for a really quick installation. In fact, these mounts are already mounted onto the cabinet. So I kind of joke around, but there's no need to even bring a measuring tape a lot of times because we have everything locked into the AV spec.
Yeah, I think, Chris, one of the big things that it did for us as we started to deploy these is it took technology off the critical path when we were putting the plans together, the construction documents. It was a very easy conversation with, in our case, JLL, which is the firm that manages a lot of our projects. Standard height. Well, what are you putting there? It doesn't matter. Standard height. So it just simplifies so many things. And then look, if we want to move things around, standard height, right? We were allocating, as we were refreshing technology at Cisco, $1,500 to $2,000 a room for room remediation. It's off the table, right? That's the nice thing about these types of solutions as we think about the more pervasive use of those.
Yeah. And also, as you dig in and find out how these are constructed, the cabinet can be reskinned at any time. So, not only is it movable where wall construction isn't, for down the road, but normal cabinets, if you want to go from a white cabinet like you see here to, say, a wood style cabinet, well, that would be replacing the entire cabinet because the structure of the cabinet are those panels, right? With us, we have an internal structure that you can actually redo, and you can put these panels on any color, any style. So as the aesthetic may change in the office place, you can make this and refresh it, which means that it's more sustainable than standard furniture as well. In this case, what you can see is we had an enterprise customer that was using the Cisco Dual 70s. And they were building out a wall for ADA compliancy. So you can see that ledge there. They were building that out for ADA compliancy. And then they were using non-AV centric cabinetry for some other gear. And anyone that's been involved in a lot of AV installations knows what it's like when the cabinet is not made for AV. You have to cut holes in it. If you don't, more holes for the fans, holes for wire management, right, for pass-through. Our cabinets are built to manage all of that and also be ADA compliant, right? So this, took wall construction, cutting, and everything else and put it into one nice package that could go in a day instead of multiple weeks. And that was a case study that we did with, several of our clients where their normal room refresh would literally be, at least a few weeks, if not a month, with multiple trades, and it literally goes down to 2, maybe 1 business day with just the AV team getting everything ready. So it really speeds up everything and helps save money in the budget. So you can spend more money on technology, which is great, and deploy more rooms given a budget as well. So here's the type of cabinet that I was talking about, where if you have that kind of glass environment, or there's a situation where the cabinet is not going to be against the wall at all, we can not only freestand, again, up to 400-pound monitors, not a problem, but also we could finish off the back. So working with those designers and architects, when you have this internal window sort of situation, you don't want to see the wires, you don't want to see backs of displays, and we have many different ways of finishing off the back. And over here, what you can see is wood panels that match the wood in the room, and you can see there in one of our tables as well. So this is very popular and a problem that we solve daily for lots of our clients. Next slide. So here's something that Mark was talking about with the height adjustability, right? So we have the electric lift, and then we also have what's called our easy touch system, and that is something that's spring-loaded. It's tensioned, so you can walk up to the largest of monitors and very easily raise and lower. It'll stop wherever you need it. And then you can also put those on our cabinet, so that way there's no wall infrastructure, all those benefits I just talked about. And this case, it's a 12-inch deep, 20-inch high cabinet, so that way that monitor can come down even farther. So that way, again, people in wheelchairs or shorter people, kids, things of that nature can very easily use that interactive flat panel. But then they can also raise it up into presentation mode as well. So you're being very adaptable and sustainable is really what we're all about. Next slide, Mark. So you saw one of our huddles in a previous slide. Here's some actual installations in Atlanta. So working with this corporate client, we developed kind of a longer table than is standard for our standard huddle, but it's on our standard huddle. We have a cabinet. Again, these displays are mounted to our structure, so there's absolutely no need for any wall modification. I was on the phone with a large healthcare provider, and they were just going over their plans for this rollout that we were talking about. And I was on the phone just to be there if there was any questions about the Salamander's part in that. But what was really interesting to me is that they had these really small rooms. And as they were going through the room, and it was like, this is going to be a private office, this is going to be a huddle. And then there was one room where they weren't sure what to do yet. And then someone piped up and goes, we don't have to make the decision right now, because if it's going to be a private office, we can order the office furniture, the desk and things. If it's going to be a huddle, we can just order the huddle. We don't need to worry about any of the infrastructure on the wall. We can change these rooms as needed depending on the use case and what we're seeing in the environment, right? And that is very important. These companies are getting more stats on how these rooms are being used than ever before, what the temperature is, how many people are in it, so on and so forth. They use that information to then decide how to maybe adjust that layout, adjust the room use. And when you have something that's done, in our system instead of standard construction, it's much easier to make rapid changes in the environment based upon how that room is being used. And of course, if the environment gets used more heavily, it's a better investment, right? Than if you have a room type that is just empty and not being used, right? So we really help companies, again, on the initial installation and through the life cycle, be more adaptable in their spaces.
Yeah, and Chris, to your point about that too, we often debate this notion of flexibility versus adaptability. What is the difference? I mean, flexibility is the ability to get multiple uses out around one experience. Adaptability is to be able to change the experience over a longer period of time based on the changing needs of the office. And what you just described around building private offices and potentially, converting them to huddle spaces or vice versa, that is the challenge I think we all face as we return to the office, and we don't know what the expectations are of our employees. We don't exactly know how they're going to, what their behaviors are going to be as they start reusing space again, and why this stuff is so powerful. So,
and I just want to chime in. If anyone has any questions, so we have a couple of questions in the Q&A box. If anyone has any questions, type them in now, and we'll get to them right at the end.
Any questions you want to cover now, Chris, or do you want to just go on?
Well, there's a question. Is Cisco working on voice control for AV systems?
Oh yeah, certainly. That's a standard feature right now across our entire portfolio. It has been for a while, the reality is it's important. It's even more important in these days of a return to office. So the same things that you could get with, you know, in the home environment with Alexa and whatever else. Think about those same capabilities. We have, we go, hey, Webex, start my meeting. Hey, Webex, add Chris. Hey, Webex, mute my call. So I think there's a lot of options there that are coming on the forefront. So.
Yeah, so thank you. And then there's one question that is for me. Have you thought about mobile AV carts that are battery powered so they can be placed where there's no power outlets? So, as far as that goes, all of our carts have racking and storage. So this should be something that is more for either getting a UPS that works for the gear that you want to power, right? Or if the manufacturer of that gear, whether it be a display or other peripherals, offers a battery that's specifically made for that. So we will house that, and so that way you can then use it. Now, however, what we do have is a 30-foot reel of retractable power cable that can go onto the back of any of our carts, and that normally gets you access to an outlet. Normally in any sort of building environment, and this is not always the case, but normally you're less than 30 feet away from a power outlet. And one of the things with batteries and battery technology today is that running any sort of display normally is only going to have about an hour or so, maybe 2 hours of use. So you're going to be having to plug in to recharge often, right? So we think that the 30-foot reel of retractable power cable is actually the better way to go. However, we can store batteries on our carts, absolutely. Do you have any? Do any of the freestanding solutions require wall anchoring, especially the low-profile cabinets? So our standard depth and deeper cabinets, we have a 21.25 and a 30-inch deep cabinet. Those are freestanding; don't have to touch the wall at all. Our 12-inch deep cabinets, they do require drywall anchors. Those anchors do come in the box. Those anchors are not for any weight bearing on the wall. It's simply for tipping. So the same way that a dresser in a child's room, you would anchor to the wall to make sure that it doesn't fall on top of them. It's the same sort of thing. So those come in the box. And again, our 4-bay low-profile cabinet, 12 inches deep, is UL listed to hold a 400-pound panel with just drywall anchors. And those cabinets come in 1 bay to as many bays as you need, depending on how many displays are going to be, and also for ADA compliancy.
And we actually have experience in deploying those also at Cisco, those low profile ones, and they're quite nice, especially on boards, because boards, you want to make sure you're not hindering the people getting up and interacting with it. So it's really important to do those shallow ones, so you're not hunched over and preventing access to all areas of the intelligent board.
Okay, I think that's all the questions at the moment.
Yeah. Hey, I think one of the things we wanted to leave you with, the reality is that we started to think at Cisco about our workplace environments. And I think the thing that's driving a lot of our behaviors right now around how we're thinking about space is the reality that the workplace, after a year of this nonsense that we've all gone through, right? The fact is, when we all can now see a day when we can get back into the office, and whether that's the beginning of the summer, the end of the summer, or sometime in the fall, hopefully we'll all get to that point. The reality is the workplace is going to need to work a lot harder to earn the trust and respect of people. And we start to realize that right now. We are going to need to offer experiences that are different, that are better than what people can get at home. And that is what is driving a lot of our design philosophy around how we're introducing not only technology and space design together, that we need to offer something special that will pull people back in to the office environment. But the concepts are pretty straightforward, right? The fact is the workplace is changing dramatically, and it is going to be centered around collaboration. As I said before, when we look at our floor plates, I have offices that we're designing now that are 75 to 80% of the square footage is dedicated to collaboration. That's how much we think the world potentially changes. Secondly, the fact is, to get it right, you got to balance space design, furnishings, and technology. And furnishing is increasingly becoming an important part of that equation, and our relationship with Salamander is proving very worthwhile in that area. As I said, going forward, the key success factors for us are optimized, flexible, and adaptable. Because quite honestly, once again, optimized, we need to be able to offer something special. Flexible, our people are going to want to have flexibility in how they use the space and how the space adapts to or addresses the things they're trying to get done. And obviously, as Chris just talked about, adaptable, right? We're not exactly sure what the world's going to bring going forward, and being able to have the ability to swap things out easily is important. And probably the most important thing that I can share with you from our lessons learned, this is not a technology discussion. This is not a real estate discussion. This is not an HR discussion. This is all three of these stakeholders coming together and staying aligned. One of the most interesting things that happened before the holiday at Cisco was our real estate team, which had previously been reporting into our COO organization, now works for our head of HR. And that is a recognition that as much as we think about managing big real estate assets, it isn't really about that. It's delivering new experiences. As we say at Cisco, moments that matter. And that is across an employee's entire life cycle with us. And every time they go to the office, it's a moment that matters. We want to make sure we give them the best experience possible.
Thanks, Mark. And just to sum up Salamander and why look at us, for your next deployment, is, we'll specialize in low impact installation. Again, saving the time on infrastructure and the money on infrastructure. Everything will connect quickly. So things like wire management and cooling and all those things, they're built into the cabinet, right? So we are designing beautiful pieces of furniture that you can be proud to have at your C-level suites all the way through that organization, that will make sure that the technology kind of gets out of the way as far as the aesthetics goes, and it's just a beautiful, inviting environment that has everything you need to have engaging meetings. All of our products are premium crafted. They're hand built in Bloomfield, Connecticut, 100% solar powered facility. You can be proud of that. With really designer styles. Our standard finishes, I would say, of our enterprise clients, and some of them are the largest companies in the world, they use about 99% of our standard finishes because they are absolutely quality materials. But then they'll also utilize our ability to custom match and also use different materials in those special environments. We also have an eye on ADA compliancy, both with our mobile products and with the cabinets that get installed in rooms. And mobility, obviously with a cart, it's mobile, but with a display on a piece of furniture, that becomes mobile too. It's adaptable. Again, wall construction is not movable, but you can move a cabinet to become more flexible as things change, right? And no one expected what happened last March, but I think moving forward, lots of companies don't want to be caught in that situation again. And having an eye on your next deployment being as adaptable as possible means that you're preparing for whatever eventuality happens in the future, right? And I'm a firm believer that the future is going to be better, but it's going to be different, right? It's going to be different than it was before. It's going to be different than it is now. And 5 years from now is going to be different than 10 years from now, right? So, our furniture lasts a lifetime and adapts with whatever comes up. And that leads us to upgradable and retrofit friendly, both upgradable in the technology sense and also with the style as well, right? So we can go from a heavily technology cabinet to a hospitality cabinet with a refrigerator and trash recycle and those sorts of things. And this is all coming to you from a sustainable manufacturer, 100% solar powered and made in the US, which we're incredibly passionate about and proud of. So thank you very much for joining us today on your Friday. And I put a link in the chat that is our white paper on standard construction versus Salamander, and also my contact information. So if you have any questions, please reach out. And I wish you all a fantastic weekend. Mark?
Thanks so much.
Thanks.